you want to surf like Devon Howard on this mid-length, on this dreamy wave at Malibu? Well, if so, let's break down his technique and his style and his approach to the wave. So the first thing I want to point out is where he's taking off on the wave, there's actually a pretty decent wall in front of him. And that's what you're going to want if you're going to do a turn. So positioning is really important. You want to take off with some wall in front of you, and that's going to give the steepness to the wave so you can actually, have the gravity and just the power and the push of the wave and have the right section to place a turn right in front of the pocket, right? So as he goes into this, you can see behind him how this wave is just about to furl over, and you can see that this steepness in the wave, that steepness is what's going to allow you to do a turn and generate speed. But what he does here actually is he's doing more of these big swooping bottom turn pumps, and he waits until he finds the right section to do the turn, right? And so a big part of it is knowing where you want to place your turn, and not every section is necessarily going to be the right place. So potentially he looked at this section, this first section here, and maybe this section in front of it was running a little bit hard, was a little too steep, where if he placed a turn at right here, he would have ended up behind the wave, right? So instead what he does is he does this big swooping bottom turn to get up high on the wave so he could drop back down and then do a turn in a section. You can see that there's a little bit more taper in this section, but this section is still relatively steep. That's kind of the section that you're going to want to place your turn here. And so just this process of pumping up and doing a high line and pumping back down is a really good way to work up to doing turns. Okay, so even if you're not at the point where you're doing turns, just practice going really high up onto the wave, trying to get as high up on that lip as possible, okay? And just getting used to driving all the energy back down and doing a bottom turn is a really good way to practice. So notice what he does though as he goes into that bottom turn to high. Let's break down the technique there first, and then we're going to break down the actual turn. So notice how compressed he is. Okay, he's compressing with both the lower body and the upper body. Okay, at this point he's going more weight on the front foot to drive the energy down the wave and uses momentum going down, and then as he begins to pivot back up, the pressure goes more to his back foot, and all that pressure is going onto his toe side rail there, and that's going to redirect the board up. And notice how he extends. Okay, he straightens up with that upper body, so he goes from this very compressed position to this extended position, right? And so that's going to give him kind of him applying force to the wave into that rail to drive the board up the wave. And so up here it's more of like this weightless feeling. You're just letting the board glide, all right? And a little bit of pressure goes more to the back foot to kind of redirect the board back down. And so what happens here is he compresses again. Notice how compressed he gets. All right, so a very common mistake is not compressing enough, and it's kind of hard to know how compressed you are until you kind of see footage of yourself. But just visual cue, just that body awareness of just getting, practice this indoors at home. Just practice getting into that compressed position like he is here, and pay attention to the way your body feels. And so he compresses, he loads up all that energy, he's shifting that weight now to the toe side rail, and now he's going into the bottom turn before his turn right here. So he's compressed, and part of the reason why his style looks so good is he's so relaxed with the upper body, right? So notice his arms are kind of down by his side, which just makes it look effortless and smooth and elegant. And then here he's eyeing up where he wants to place that bottom turn. And so now he begins to engage that toe side rail. Okay, he's compressed, and notice how much pressure he's putting onto that toe side rail, right? Like half the board is underwater right here, and he's reaching for that wave with his back hand to act as a little bit of a pivot point, and he holds this while he's eyeing up, because he has to allow time, especially with the longer board, for the board to redirect up the wave face. Okay, so you can tell he has a really powerful bottom turn because you can see all the spray shooting out the back of it. Okay, And notice that he's going from compressed with his legs and his upper body to then extending, and then he goes up into his turn once the board has redirected up. Okay, now pay attention to the way this section looks, right? So here it's pretty steep, okay? Right here, it's gonna stand up. This section right here is going to stand up, but there's a little bit of a taper, which is gonna give him room and space to do that open carve. So as he goes into it, notice that he allows time to get high up on the wave. So notice where he's placing this turn, right? So this is going to be where that lip is going to form, and so he's placing his turn high up on that wave face, and that's going to give him more room to do his turn, and it's also going to allow, kind of gravity to work for him to drive back down the turn, right? And so what's happening here is he's applying that toe side pressure, the heel side pressure, and he's also beginning to rotate with that upper body. Okay, so you can see that his back arm is beginning to drive forward, and his front arm is facing down here. But notice that when he began it, okay, his back arm was more swinging back. So he swings from back arm being back to back arm swinging forward. Okay, and so notice he's putting a lot of pressure on that heel side rail here, and he comes around. And as he does this, notice how much more forward his back arm gets, so that now his back arm is kind of over to the front, and his back arm is more towards the back. Okay, and he compresses back down. Notice how compressed he gets again. Okay, because again, that compression is going to allow him to release that potential energy as he goes into his next bottom turn or into his pump. And potentially, he might be thinking, maybe I'm going to go into a bottom turn and do a top turn here. So by getting compressed, he's getting ready to do that bottom turn. So again, he goes into that bottom turn, gets super compressed. Okay, but instead of doing a turn, he decides, you know what, this is not the right section for it. So again, he does a little pump, compresses, and then extends, and then just kicks out his wave, does another little turn. But just, yeah, beautiful surfing from Devon Howard. Hopefully this helped. Go ahead and give us a like and subscribe, and I'll see you around.